to this.
Okay, thank you, Ekan.
No problem. Okay.
So I'll start. Good morning to you all, and welcome to, of course, our second webinar of 2022. And I'm glad to really have you online this morning. This will be presented, of course, by Akan Satik, and Akan Satik is the customer development lead for the Sub-Saharan Africa. And I am Alex Mutil from the UbuntuNet Alliance. So Akan, you're most welcome. And of course, to also our participants online this morning, you are very much welcome once again to this call. Just to reiterate that in this era of digitization, I think there are many compromise points that are available to, of course, attackers in our, of course, ecosystems. And one of the clearer ones really is the distributed denial of service attacks, which I'm sure that Akan will also be talking a lot about. And we know that these attacks in certain instances have rendered systems very unusable. And of course, adverse effects that might even lead to actually data loss. And I'm really very excited this morning that, again, Cloudflare will be presenting, again, more on these attacks and particular controls at the application layer. And I know they will also provide further layer specific, of course, controls that they have already implemented as part of course, their portfolio of services.
Thank you very much, Alex, and welcome everybody. Some of you I may know, if not by name, certainly by face. And just to give you a little bit of a bio as to how I know the UbuntuNet Alliance and why, when I joined Cloudflare, that I reached out. So in a previous life, I used to work for a large African telco called Liquid Telecom. And during those times, we worked on many of the projects from GN and the UbuntuNet Alliance to provide connectivity for the NRENs. And that's how, you know, and I've attended many of your conferences. And with that in mind, and understanding the challenges that the NRENs face, and having moved to a company like Cloudflare that has internet security and making the internet a much better place, and understanding the thirst of knowledge and development of students and IT professionals across the continent, you know, I reached out to Alex and we had a chat and see if, you know, this would be interest for the Alliance in general. So, you know, I've been working the Sub-Saharan Africa for probably about 9 years now. So I've traveled to most of your opcos. I understand the challenges that are faced, and a lot has changed from when I first landed on the continent in 2012 to where we are in 2022. So you know, the way we connect has changed, and the way our customers and our colleagues of Connect have changed as well. So, you know, just to give a background, you know, I'm fully aware of who the Alliance are, and, you know, I'm really spoke to Alex, and it's something that I think would be useful to you, some of these things, not just from a product perspective, but from an education perspective as well. And some of this stuff you probably already know, but I want to take this conversation on a journey so we understand where we were and where we're trying to go to. So as we all know, a little thing called COVID hit us not so long ago, and this has pushed out a lot of resources into the cloud, into remote working, into connecting from places that are less than desirable in terms of security. And it also has caused us many, many challenges in terms of suddenly having to scale the way people connect into our networks, It's shifted the volume of connectivity around the network, and not all systems have been able to cope with that. And on top of all of this, we're seeing lots and lots of legislation, rightly so, by the way, legislation from authorities quite heavily in East Africa. We've noticed that East Africa is getting more and more proactive around data protection and data sovereignty. And we're also seeing the same in West Africa as well. We mostly see it from a commercial perspective, so it's around normally banking, but we understand it's a much broader initiative, because we've also seen pressure being applied to telcos to provide security against DDoS, identity theft, and the likes. And also in South Africa, as we know, they enacted the POPIA law, which is effectively based on GDPR. And so Cloudflare is GDPR compliant. So, and I believe, GDPR exceeds that of the mandate of POPIA as well. But the question is around scalability and security. And this is where I think a lot of companies have struggled. And this is where, we've helped many, many organizations to overcome this hurdle. So we provide connectivity to and security to a number of universities worldwide. I think we go into some of those case studies towards the end, but we're seeing more and more of educational networks coming onto Cloudflare to help with their security portfolio, because the dynamics changed all the time. So they do get DDoS attacked, right? On-premise WAF isn't always able to cope with the sheer volume of connectivity coming in. With the way that people are connected, they need faster DNS resolvers. Cloudflare is one of, if not the fastest DNS resolver on the planet. So, it's speeding up that site and getting people to be able to connect quickly, so you don't get, frustration on trying to connect to a network. I'm not going to talk about CDN. CDN for us is a commodity. It's just part and parcel of what we do, and that's one of the things that helps us to provide a quicker service. So moving on, there's some stuff that that we are seeing going forward, and we'll talk about this as the narrative goes forward, which is the zero trust and the VPN replacements. I don't like that term, but it's a term that's commonly used, because I think it's not replacing something that is necessarily broken. I think it's an evolution of something that needed to change. So SASE brings you more controls about how you identify somebody, what they can do once they're in the network, and how we control people coming in and out of our network. And zero trust may sound like a negative word in itself, but I think it's very much a positive in terms of managing your cyber threat risk. And also it's about protecting the end user as well from hijacking, phishing, and whatnot. And to the point of this slide, Cloudflare does it as a single solution. So when you take up Cloudflare and a lot of its options, it ends up as a much better TCO for most organizations. Okay, so talking about DDoS, Alex, there are a couple of ways that DDoS is viewed across the industry. So, and I'm not going to mention company names because, their services are great for certain instances and certain geographies, and others are better in others. But really, it's more about the approach that Cloudflare takes with regards to DDoS. So back in the olden days when we were, selling 10 gigs sites into Zambia or into Kenya, you would have physical connectivity going backwards and forwards. And if there was a DDoS, you would have to drop a box in. I'm not going to mention their company names, but we all know who they are. And then once that box hit saturation, it would start black holing the traffic. And it also needed bandwidth to go all the way back to a scrubbing center, most likely in Europe, sometimes the US, sometimes in Asia. So, but there was never really anything on the continent. Cloudflare has taken a different approach to connectivity in general. I think we have a blog. If you're not already following it, please do so. We've taken a very different approach to connectivity and the way we deploy our networks. So I'll get to what the network map looks like, but so traditionally in a DDoS attack, whether it be layer 7 and to be honest with you, there would be an on-premise box running something, would get hit, goes back, and goes back. Cloudflare has 20 POPs throughout the African continent. I think we got 2 in Kenya, 3 in South Africa. We've got Zimbabwe, we've got Angola, a couple in West Africa and a few in North Africa. We've got Madagascar, Liberia, quite a few. And the way we deploy our DDoS services is in and around the Anycast network principle. So when we provide DDoS solutions, everywhere there's a POP is a scrubbing center. It's not a scrubbing center, but it acts as a scrubbing center. So what we do is when an attack comes in, we distribute that attack across the entire network. I did notice there was a hand raised. Alex, do you want to do questions at the end, or do you want to do them as we go along?
Sure, we'll do them at the end.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So I'm not being rude to who raised their hand, by the way. I just want to know what the problem is. Okay, so that's just an overall view of our approach to the traditional approach. So we launched in 2010. I think there's a little bit of a sketchy history around whether we started as an internet security company or as a anti-spam email spam company, but we started in 2010, formed by 3 people as a venture startup from a university project. We now have 3.5 million customers. We're in over 250 cities around the world. That's constantly growing, by the way. We're well over 2,000 employees, and that's probably closer to 3,000 now. And we're protecting 19% of the Fortune 500 customer base. So as you know, most of those will be financial institutions who rely heavily on internet security. So these are some of the publicly referenceable customers. There are other customers on here which we cannot publicly reference, but suffice to say, the video platform that we are on may or may not be one of our customers for layer 3 DDoS. So and we provide services to one of the major CRMs on the planet as well. And I'm not sure if there's the government. I've got government on here. No. So and this is publicized, so you can read up on this. And we also provide security services for the Department of Homeland Security in the US. So going to what the network looks like, and before anyone says, I'm from a telco background, and no, we don't own every single cable that connects all of these. This network is made up of like in the US, we own some of our own dark fiber, maybe even some in Europe. In Africa, it's mostly around long hauls back or peering arrangements within these within certain geographies. But as you can see, the actual distribution of our network is huge. And the entire network scales to about 100 terabits. And the reason why this is important, so if you remember the slide I said we talk about the Anycast network as opposed to the hub and spoke, is that if we're sitting in let's say Rwanda, and we have a pop in Rwanda, by the way, so if we're sitting in Rwanda and we're getting an attack from, say, Brazil, right? I don't want to pick on the Russians. I think they've got enough problems. But let's say it's Brazil, right? And Brazil launch an attack into Rwanda. Now, traditionally, what would happen is that traffic would get to Rwanda by whatever means. That would be flagged up there as an attack. And then it would be sent to a scrubbing center in Europe. That scrubbing would be cleaned, and then that clean traffic will be sent back to Rwanda. What Cloudflare does is we mitigate at source. So if the attack originates in Sao Paulo, we would start mitigating that attack in the region. We'd spread that traffic across the region. So any traffic that came to Rwanda would automatically be clean traffic coming in. Yeah, and that's for layer 3 and layer 7 and layer 4, by the way, so across the entire layer. We also have 10,000 interconnects, network interconnects across the world, which you can dispute it one way or the other, but we're certainly the largest interconnected business of our type, and depending on the time of the year, we sometimes even overtake Cogent in terms of, not Cogent, Hurricane Electric in terms of the number of interconnects. And we also provide 100% uptime SLA. So this is something that a lot of people don't. So because we run the Anycast network, and because we've got 10,000 interconnects, and because we've got 100 terabits, our service will always be available as long as you have an internet connection. So I talked about the POPs in Africa, and this is, this will maybe appeal to the engineers in the room. So, so these are all the POPs. I can share this presentation. It's not a problem. I'm not going to read them all out. Is Harari on here? I can't remember. Okay, I'll refresh this before we send it out. I think we got some more POPs already. So the difference between, I say, Cloudflare and some of the other providers is, and specifically in Africa actually, is that we provide all of the suites of services that we talk about today in all of the POPs that you see. So, we don't have a scrubbing center in Europe, and we don't have a security center in Japan or whatnot. So every single one of our POPs has all of our services and is served as local as possible, which is why we're serving less than 50 milliseconds from most connected cities. And we talked about where we started. So we started in 2010 with, as I say, like a email security business, and as we've progressed, and as the threat landscapes have increased, things have changed, and people have gone e-commerce, and people have moved away from fixed networks and relied more and more on the internet. We've had to onboard more and more services to secure those applications or users. So, we started out in email, and now we're talking about doing zero trust. We're talking about virtual SD-WANs, our Magic WAN product. We're talking about cloud compute with our workers. So, there's lots and lots of stuff that's coming out, and we're knocking out products weekly. If we haven't already announced it, we will be announcing it. We'll be adding email filtering into the product set as well. So, take some of that pain away from some of our customers, or those that don't have it already. So this is what it used to look like. So years ago, and some of you may already, some of you may not have moved away from this, but on premise, you would generally have multiple boxes. So you'd have a firewall, you'd have a router, you'd have a switch, you'd have some degree of accelerator. Oh, pardon me. And then your applications obviously could sit on premise as well, or it could be in the clouds, but yeah, mostly it was on premise. It was always on a SunSpark sitting on somebody's desk. And again, with storage, it was normally a facility somewhere where you had a physical link towards. Yeah, not all cases, but this is a generalization slide. But this is where Weird World is now, specifically in probably North America, Europe, most of Asia, and large swathes of Africa now. So we're seeing our insights are that as the large productivity providers start to move into the continent, we're seeing a lot of cloud adoption. We're seeing a lot of people moving towards the cloud for storage and compute. And away from physical connectivity. So this is my favorite slide, by the way. It's the most simplistic slide, but it's actually the one that explains what Cloudflare is in the most succinct way. So we've got visitors, users. All right, so that could be people trying to come into your site. I'm not sure if any of the NRENs have any kind of e-commerce at all on the platforms, or that they will have certainly have visitors coming in and trying to get resources. You want good bots, obviously, because you want to increase your SEO, and there are certain things that are much better automated. But on the flip side of that, you've got bad bots, bots that are designed to knock out your systems or slow you down. And then you've got obviously malicious bad actors who, just want to go and have some fun, maybe knock out a network, or more nefariously try and demand some degree of ransom from an organization. Customers, we understand, have a combination, and there's no one customer that has all of one of these or none of these, or so that each customer is very, very different. So some customers are very much on premise for whatever reason. For example, mines tend to be very, very on premise because they need that equipment to be right on site. Other companies might find that they're happier with the security of the box being online. Some companies have gone multi-cloud, spread their risk across cloud providers. Pretty much everyone's using some degree of SaaS now. I'd be surprised any business isn't using some degree of SaaS. But most businesses are going a combination of these, or at least a combination of these two. We're seeing on-premise beginning to be phased out to a large degree, apart from routing and switching. What Cloudflare does is kind of an invisible shield between the bad actors and also a gateway for the intended users. So we create a shield, make sure that these guys are allowed to hit these things. If they're not, to kick them out, and we're here to block bad actors. And this varies product to product, by the way, so there's no one way of doing it, but effectively that is what we are. We're in that invisible shield. So before anyone asks, we do act as a reverse proxy, and that's how we achieve that. Okay. So this is effectively how we're seen. So we're in the middle. So we are, how can I describe this really? I don't like to use this term, but we are almost like an internet within the internet. So we're a secure part of the internet because we carry roughly around 20% of the global internet traffic. So I'm reliably told. We see quite a lot of good things and bad things. We tend to see trends around, like the unfortunate events that's currently happening in the CIS region. We see like who's blocking what and whatnot. So, we see quite a lot of attack vectors. And we also see the number of different types of attacks coming in. I will share a resource with you. It's called Cloudflare Radar. Feel free to Google it. And that gives you a country by country snapshot, or at least our view. Obviously, it's not the whole view, but it's our view of what's happening, what's popular in terms of websites, what types of attacks are coming in, who's using TLS, who's using what kind of service, what type of attacks are going on as well. And you'll see, and you can look at that over a time period. So a little bit of back around the DDoS. How am I doing for time, by the way, Alex? Am I okay?
Yes, you still have about, it's supposed to be 1 hour, so.
Okay. All right. So is the pacing okay? Just so I want to make sure the pacing's okay. I'm not missing anything, or are you happy?
Yeah, comments?
Okay, I'll take silence as a yes.
All right.
Okay. All right. So I can't see the notes because I'm presenting on a screen, so I do apologize. Did they say it was okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So this is a little bit more granular about how we do layer 7, layer 4, and layer 3 attacks. And I know some of you will be quite interested in this. So, as you know, you get so as I said, mentioned before, Cloudflare acts as a reverse proxy for the origins. So, and we had things like load balancers and whatnot, and we also use something which I didn't mention before, which I should have done, which is something we call Argo Smart Routing, which is a it's like an AI routing, not protocol. Protocol is the wrong word. It's a routing system where the network looks at where to serve the traffic in the optimal way. So just because something is physically shorter doesn't mean it's going to be quicker to deliver, because if that link is congested, it will send it via an alternative route, which will deliver that service quicker than the shortest route, and vice versa. So so Cloudflare acts as a reverse proxy. So as the request comes in, Cloudflare sits in between your origins and the internet, and this is where we protect. So the malicious traffic never gets to your origins. So we're protecting it even before it hits your machines. Obviously, this is done by setting up rules and creating your own bespoke security posture. So I know Alex has tested this, so maybe Alex can maybe speak to this around what he's done around that. So, and it's very, very easy to configure. It's we call it a single pane of glass. So when you go onto the dashboard, you'll see that all the options that you're entitled to are on there, and it's literally click, create rules, and deploy. And one of the great things about having the Anycast network is you can deploy or undeploy a rule like within seconds. Yeah. So if you've created a rule, it causes the problem, you can quickly go in there, delete that rule, and it reverts back. So you're not waiting for things to propagate and then repropagate back. It's very, very quick, and it's very flexible. So that's how we, so if we see like so I'm trying to flood your website, that would come in, we'd see that coming in. We'd also probably see that going through multiple exchanges as well. So, you know, in many cases, we're already prepared for it. But if it hits your local node, we will see that coming in. We will distribute that attack, layer 7 or layer 4 attack across our 100 terabit network, but pass through all the clean traffic that goes towards your website. On the layer 3 side, so if you're running your own ASN or you run /24s, this works slightly differently. So what would happen is you would register your or give us LOA to put your IP ranges behind Cloudflare. So what would happen is any attacker coming in would because your range would be in the Cloudflare range, we would automatically start blocking the DDoS, and again spreading it across 100 terabit network, and pass through all the clean traffic as per normal. I think it takes about a few seconds to spin up. So you'll see the attack, and then we'll normalize it, and then traffic will flow normally. So this does say, so I'm going to caveat this, and I want to explain why I'm caveating it. So it does say the egress will go directly back on your internet link. That's sort of changed now. We are able to provide egress DDoS as well now. However, we do restrict it to 1 gigabytes because we are not looking to become an IP transit provider. So, you know, if we start going more than that, we start becoming an IP transit provider. That's not the direction necessarily that we're trying to go to. But if it's really important, like we have historically seen lots and lots of DDoS attacks coming out of Rwanda, you know, and if you want to stop that, and then, you know, that is a possibility. So having said that, so I'm just going to recap slightly. Historically, most people have had physical networks coming in. As times has changed, more and more things have become more and more internet dependent. This has caused many challenges. A lot of the historical firewalls, a lot of the on-premise based WAFs, and even to a degree, some of the network equipment hasn't been able to scale to be able to serve all this. So as people move into the cloud, that also creates new challenges. So you need to, you no longer have the physical security of your network or your appliances. It's now or your services, and now it's all based in the cloud. So now you have to start thinking about, well, I can save costs by not having to buy massive lots of network, because a lot of the stuff is going to be in the cloud, and my customers are going to natively hit my services within the cloud. But I also need to protect myself. So with that in mind, ignore Teams, by the way, this has changed to zero trust. So just ignore that for a second. So Cloudflare provides a suite of services for the application level, web application firewall, layer 7 DDoS protection is standard. We can provide rate limiting. So if you're receiving login attacks, you know, we can set up rules, and you can very, very customizable. Bot management, this is mostly for e-commerce, to be perfectly honest with you, because a lot of pages get hit like that. And this is quite an interesting one, actually, because I know this is a pain for nearly every IT department in the world, which is SSL and TLS certification. So Cloudflare natively provides shared SSL certificates. So if you onboard your domain onto Cloudflare, you have the option to use a Cloudflare shared SSL certificate. If for governance or preference or whatever, you need your own SSL certification, We can onboard your certification onto Cloudflare, transfer across, but you would still manage the renewals. If you purchased SSL certificates through Cloudflare, then we would automatically manage the renewals and make sure that they never lapsed. So I know lots of companies with lots of SSL certificates find actual administration of that quite painful. And on the network side, I think we've covered that. So our layer 3 DDoS service is called Magic Transit. And again, it's about putting your IP ranges behind the Cloudflare network and then us protecting it against the scaled network. And just as an aside, actually, and this came as a bit of a shock to me, but people that have taken Magic Transit have said to us that their actual performance of their network has improved, which kind of makes sense when you think about it. If we've got 10,000 interconnects, when they're trying to hit a website, the likelihood is that we're going to get to that origin quicker than most, well, certainly than most telcos. And yeah, so we, as again, layer 4, we can protect you against layer 4, TCP and UDP attacks as well. And this is, so this little section we call Teams is now called Zero Trust. This is fastest growing part of our network or our services. And this is something I'm not entirely sure if you're considering, and we call it SASE or Zero Trust or whatnot, but this is something that is really reducing the threat landscape of businesses, companies, organizations with regards to not only does it protect the business against outside attacks, it also protects the user against things like phishing or keylogging or JavaScript attacks or browser hijacking. So, and we'll touch on that, but so this is what those areas look like, in themselves. So on the Zero Trust side, we've got Secure Web Gateway. We've got something called RBI, which is Remote Browser Isolation, and that is effectively how we stop keylogging and browser hijacking. So if you have a sensitive site, maybe it might be payroll, it might be finance, it might be whatever it is you choose. We can spin up a virtual instance in your local Cloudflare POP. It's not a VM, so we'll create that, and then what we'll do is we'll just pass the vector graphics backwards and forwards between your endpoint and the Cloudflare edge that's serving it. In low connectivity areas, customers have actually even said that it's actually improved performance of a website. I've not seen it, but it's anecdotally what's been said. We're branching out into it's kind of a WAN as a service. So this is our SD-WAN product, firewall, network firewall, virtual network firewalls, smart routing, which I think I kind of touched upon, interconnects. We don't need to worry too much about. And this is the developer platform I was talking about. So this is the like the edge compute. So we've got workers KV. Please don't ask me what the difference is. This is really a specialist area. What I do know about this is you can run websites natively on the edge, so you don't actually need anything. So you can spin up a website in Python or Rust or whatever you decide to use, and it will only spin up as and when the request comes in locally to where it's been requested. So wherever one of our dots are, it will spin up an instance. So we also offer something called Video Stream. Now, this may not be of interest, it may be of interest. So we offer a broadcast streaming service. not too dissimilar to like Vimeo or YouTube, but not at the scale. So it's really designed around corporates trying to push out messaging towards their staff. So if you go to something like cloudflare.tv, you'll see a lot of content that we put out there. So a lot of useful instructional videos around what we're doing, interviews with various different industry leaders, or just general chats, and it's really a great place to go and get some information. But we use our video stream service for that. So, wherever you are in the world, that's cached locally and served.